He muted me mid-sentence, in front of everyone. But let me back up, because the beginning of the end didn't start there. It started 3 weeks earlier when I got an invite to a realignment meeting and found myself face-to-face with Zach Pritchard, the VP's 26-year-old son, wearing Yeezys and a Patagonia vest over a dress shirt that still had the plastic clip creases down the sleeves. His handshake was limp, his questions pointless, and his smile, that cocky little half smirk that said he thought everyone in the room was lucky to be breathing the same air he exhaled. He introduced himself as our strategic oversight advisor and immediately began cutting calendar invites, gutting our code review process, and replacing it all with agile check-ins that felt more like TED Talks with a side of incompetence. I've led ArcLine's development since the original whiteboard sketch in a tiny conference room with flickering lights and a broken Keurig. 11 years of sleepless nights, stress migraines, and code commits at 3:12 a.m. when a deployment window opened for a Fortune 100 client in Tokyo. And now this intern cosplaying as leadership wanted to modernize. He once asked me if we could just swap AWS for Dropbox to save costs. Another time, he suggested hiring a chatbot assistant to rewrite our CI/CD pipeline. The man couldn't spell redundancy, let alone grasp why ArcLine had 6 fallback triggers before a single customer ever noticed latency. I didn't argue. I documented. Quietly. Thoroughly. Precisely. Because when a toddler plays with fire, you don't shout. You check for insurance and clear the exits. And for those of you who enjoy watching corporate karma catch up to its victims in slow, glorious motion, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It takes less than a second, and it keeps these stories coming from people who've survived the fire and walked out holding the blueprints. Back to Zach. He started whispering about dead weight, which is rich coming from a man who couldn't explain what a distributed hash table was, but still insisted we didn't need so many engineers just for data sanitation. My team? Seasoned. Smart. People who'd shipped secure pipelines while he was still memorizing beer pong rules. And suddenly, we were reporting to him temporarily, per the new org chart that arrived without a single conversation. I played nice. Took the calls, smiled through the ignorance, but I also started combing back through old documentation, checking access logs, and, more importantly, pulling my own employment agreement. That's when I saw it. Tucked inside the founder-era addendum, still in effect thanks to HR's laziness and a decade of org changes that no one properly audited. A clause tying ArcLine's core licensing IP to the continued employment of one name. Mine. They'd never updated it, never reassigned it. Never read the fine print. For a system valued at $180 million in active contracts, they'd left the keys in the ignition and assumed the engine would just purr along without checking who built the damn car. I didn't feel rage, not yet. Just that sinking stillness you get when you realize the avalanche already started, and you're the only one standing uphill with a weather report and a parachute. They'd handed oversight of our backbone tool to a nepotism baby with a god complex and no clue what he'd just walked into. So I watched, I logged, and I waited. He called it a strategic reshuffle, like that made it less insulting. One Thursday morning, no warning, no pre-read, just a calendar bomb from Zach. Team alignment update, mandatory. We all logged in, and there he was, camera way too close, hair gelled like he was hosting a tech podcast, grinning like he just got handed a participation trophy. Effective immediately, he said. Lydia's team will report to me as part of a temporary optimization transition. I remember blinking once slow because the word temporary always means permanent when it comes from a guy whose MBA still smells like ink. Then he started canceling our roadmap reviews. Just wiped the board clean. No more 90-day alignment sessions. No more compliance checkpoints. He even deleted the ticket tracker we used to measure deployment stability. Said it was too granular. In its place, a consulting firm out of Denver. No credentials, no onboarding, just 3 dudes in matching polos who started asking if we could port the whole stack to Python, because it's more hip. One of them had to Google what a load balancer was mid-meeting. Another asked if our clients had ever considered just using Airtable. I wish I was making that up. I asked Zach privately, off Slack, off the record, why we weren't easing them in with sandbox access first. His response? We're going agile now, Lydia. Don't get stuck in legacy thinking. Be a team player. Right. Team player. that old chestnut. I've been a team player for 11 years. I've built frameworks that kept client data protected during foreign cyber attacks. I've migrated entire infrastructures between providers in 36-hour windows without downtime. But sure, I'll take notes from the kid who thinks a hot reload is something you get from DoorDash. That night, I stayed late, not to prove anything, but to prepare. I pulled every revision record from the last 5 years, every authorship stamp, every single commit I'd made, because I knew where this was heading. And I wasn't about to let them bury my fingerprints under a pile of outsourced spaghetti code and buzzwords. That's when I reopened the original licensing document. The one we signed when Arcline was just a concept, and the founder still took his coffee black in that awful styrofoam cup. I hadn't looked at it in years. But something told me to check. And there it was. Buried in section 6.2e, halfway down a paragraph about continuity of technical stewardship, in a clause nobody else would bother to read unless they knew what to look for. IP continuity and control retention are bound to the presence of the named principal architect. No wiggle room. No or designee. Just a name. My name. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled through my nose, and stared at that sentence for a long time. They thought I was a relic, a replaceable cog in the machine. But that contract said otherwise. That contract said the house doesn't stand unless I'm inside it. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just saved a PDF copy, encrypted it, and placed it in 3 different off-site backups. I was still here, for now. But I just found the failsafe. And if they were going to push, I was going to let gravity do the rest. They broke staging in under 6 hours. Didn't even make it to lunch before the whole pre-prod environment coughed blood and flatlined. One of the consultants, Trevor, I think, tweaked a config script to improve performance and accidentally disabled half the data sanitation layer, which in Arcline means one thing: contaminated records flowing downstream like raw sewage into VIP client buckets. I saw the alert come through on my phone before they even noticed. I logged in, traced the break, confirmed the timestamp, and typed out a short message in Slack offering to help triage. Just 5 words. Zach replied almost instantly. No need, legacy knowledge isn't scalable. That was the moment the air shifted. You could feel it. My team went silent. No reaction emojis, no typing bubbles, just dead quiet. Not because they agreed, but because they saw the writing on the wall. And because they knew me well enough to understand I wasn't going to fight this one out in Slack threads and corporate platitudes. I didn't answer. Just closed my laptop, sat with that silence a minute longer, and waited until after hours, when the office was dark, the VPN logs quiet, and the SharePoint alerts asleep. Then I started moving. First, I pulled every personal file, old calendars, side project notes, the spreadsheet I used to track caffeine intake during the Q4 outage of 2019. Then I encrypted my directories and purged temp cache files with a script I'd written years ago for travel laptops. No fanfare, no trace. After that, I opened the locked folder I hadn't touched in years. Arcline Continuity Rev 3. Inside was the chain of custody documentation for the IP, author signatures, time-stamped commits, legal appendices, internal emails between engineering and legal confirming that I was the designated principal architect of record. I scrolled through the metadata logs and saw it. Last accessed 3 months ago. Accessed by Jichin, Gwen Chen, our lead corporate counsel. I sat with that for a while. Gwen's not the type to poke around for fun. If she opened that file, it was for a reason, and she never brought it up, never flagged it, which told me one thing. Someone, somewhere, already knew that clause existed. They'd seen it, but they were hoping they'd never have to act on it. Well, now they would. I printed my resignation letter next, on actual paper, signed it with my old blue Pilot pen I used when Arcline got its first seed grant, folded it once. No dramatics, just a clean break. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. The kind of done that lives in your chest when you realize you've already given more than they ever noticed. The kind of done that doesn't need revenge because the bricks are already loose and you're holding the blueprint with the removal instructions. I shut off the lights, walked out of the office, didn't even look back at my desk, because tomorrow someone else was going to sit in that chair and realize too late what wasn't there anymore. The call started late, because of course it did. Half the company was already in the Zoom lobby when Zach finally rolled in, 10 minutes past the hour, sipping a protein shake like he just finished solving world hunger in his CrossFit group chat. "Big news, everyone," he grinned, eyes darting to his notes like he didn't even trust himself to remember the script. "We're outsourcing Arcline." Just like that. 4 words, no context, no warning. My inbox lit up in real time, direct messages from people on my team, old collaborators, even a PM from our Tokyo client thread asking if the rumors were true. Zach went on, smirking like he'd just dropped a TED Talk bomb. "Over the next 30 days, Lydia's team will begin the transition to our new development partners. We believe this shift will unlock new efficiencies and modernization pathways." Modernization pathways. That's what they're calling this now. I reached for my unmute button. Not to argue, just to speak, just to clarify what the team could expect and what documentation we had already prepared in the event of a transition. Because even in insult, I still gave a damn. But I never got the chance. Zach clicked first. I saw it on the bottom corner of my screen. "You've been muted by the host." His voice kept going. "Thanks for your legacy contributions, Lydia. We'll be in touch during knowledge transfer." That was the moment. The flick of the final switch. I didn't blink, didn't scowl, just sat still, face unreadable. Then I reached down, picked up my badge, still clipped to the same lanyard from my first day 11 years ago, and my resignation letter folded once, signature side facing the webcam. Held them up. 1 Mississippi, 2, 3. Then I clicked leave meeting. No words, no rebuttal, just silence. The kind of silence that vibrates louder than 1,000 Slack threads screaming into the void. What most people didn't see, or maybe didn't clock, was the expression on Gwen Chen's face when I lifted that letter. She was in the bottom right of my screen, the company's lead counsel, usually unreadable, always cool. But when I raised that paper, her eyes widened, just slightly, and her posture stiffened. She stood up and stepped out of frame mid-meeting. She knew. Everyone else kept talking. One of the new biz dev kids started clapping. A consultant cracked a joke about leaning forward. The founder wasn't even on the call. But Gwen saw what just happened. Because now it was official. The continuity holder was no longer employed, and every clock tied to Arcline's license agreement had just started ticking. Slack was already on fire by the time Gwen reached the executive channel. Screenshots of my resignation stunt spread like wildfire, some shared with laughing emojis, others with quiet WTF messages in private threads. Engineers on other teams started speculating. Did she really quit mid-call? Was that a staged exit? One guy posted a gif of the Joker walking away from a hospital explosion. Classy. But legal wasn't laughing. By 2:47 p.m., Gwen's office had sent a priority message to the founder's assistant. Subject: Arcline license, urgent body. We may have just lost Arcline, need to discuss clause 6.2e immediately. The founder didn't even know what that meant at first. It had been 11 years since he'd looked at those contracts. He hadn't touched engineering since the company scaled past 50 people. That's when he started scheduling more golf meetings than backlog reviews. But Gwen knew. She pulled the original IP filing, the addendum with my signature, the legal correspondence that tied Arcline's proprietary codebase, line by line, to the presence of a single continuity holder. Not a department, not a role, a name. Mine. And that's when things got worse. Because the consultants Zach brought in, they were still locked out. They didn't have root credentials. They couldn't even access staging without a supervisor token, which I never gave because I was never asked. No one thought to request a credential transfer. No one thought I'd actually walk. The founder's inbox pinged again at 3:12 p.m. System notification, license dependency. Triggered, principal architect unassigned Arcline access. Tier, restricted mode. Initiated time to compliance breach, 17 business days, that's all it took. One automated flag from the license manager we installed years ago. It was set to alert only in the event of a continuity break. I remember writing the notification string myself. In Slack, Zach kept posting status updates like nothing had happened. Transition timeline still on track. Consultants syncing with DevOps Monday. He had no idea. Meanwhile, Gwen was assembling a war room. Not in the metaphorical sense, an actual locked conference room with pulled blinds and a 5-person legal team ripping through every version of the license, every timestamp, every legal obligation tied to technical stewardship. Somebody finally asked the right question. What happens if she doesn't come back? The answer? Then every contract built on Arcline's infrastructure is in breach. We lose IP rights, client trust, and access control across the stack. We'd have to rebuild or relicense everything from scratch. And all of this was happening without me saying a single word. I wasn't in the building, wasn't on Slack, wasn't answering my phone. I was already gone. And they were just beginning to understand what that meant. Zach called it symbolic. That's the word he used. Symbolic. As if my name tied to 11 years of infrastructure was just a sentimental flourish, like a coffee mug left behind in a server rack. He barged into legal's morning huddle, waving his phone like it held the key to salvation. Guys, come on, this clause is founder-era fluff. It was never meant to be enforced, it's symbolic. We can reassign the license. Just update the documents and move on. Gwen didn't even flinch. She set down her glasses, pulled up the digital copy of the licensing agreement, and pointed to Clause 6.2e. Continuity and operational control of the Arcline system is inseparable from the employment status of the principal architect. Assignment of root intellectual property rights is void unless consented to by the named holder. Signed, L. Reynolds. She looked up at him, dead calm. That's not symbolic, Zach. That's binding, and you just triggered it. That's when the founder finally got involved. A company-wide status meeting was yanked off the calendar and replaced with a core response meeting, restricted attendance. Gwen, the founder, 2 senior engineers, and Zach, who looked like he hadn't slept since the all-hands, filed into the war room. Someone closed the blinds. Another rolled in a whiteboard, already marked with IP timelines and contract renewal dates. The founder's first words: "Tell me we can fix this." Silence. One of the senior engineers muttered, "Not without her signature." Meanwhile, I was 50 miles away, curled into a couch that didn't belong to me, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug with a faded duck on it. The Airbnb was quiet, tucked against a lake so still it looked painted. No email, no phone, no Slack. Just me, a paperback copy of The Left Hand of Darkness, and a low sun catching the edges of the water like gold foil. My phone buzzed 3 times. I didn't look. I already knew who it was. Gwen tried to call once, left no voicemail, just a single missed call time-stamped exactly 20 minutes after the founders' meeting began. Back in the office, someone finally found the file, buried in the shared legal drive, untouched since the last contract audit, transfer determination, doc, G-Chen, signature. PDF, it was blank, unsigned, because we never finished the transition paperwork, because no one thought I'd leave, because Zach never understood the difference between authority and ownership. They kept checking the audit logs, hoping to find some loophole, something Gwen might have missed. But the metadata told the whole story. I was the author, the signer, the steward. And unless I walked back through that door and signed off on the transfer, they didn't just lose access. They lost Arcline. And I was watching ducks skim the lake surface, flipping a page, breathing air I didn't have to share with panic. They tried every angle short of showing up at my door. By Monday, the founder had his assistant combing LinkedIn for anyone who might know where I'd gone. Old co-workers, college friends, even the guy I briefly dated from the 2014 DevSecOps conference in Austin. He messaged me a confused, "Hey, you okay?" like we hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. HR sent a form email. We'd love to reconnect and explore a mutually beneficial resolution. Legal followed up with a certified letter I never signed for. Zach. He didn't reach out. Probably too busy pretending he had a plan. Gwen didn't pretend. She sat the executive team down, opened the license agreement again, and said flatly, 12 business days. That's how long you have before the license nullifies. Once that happens, every client with an SLA tied to Arcline can walk without penalty, and they will. The founder asked what would happen if they rebuilt Arcline from scratch. Gwen didn't laugh. She just blinked slowly and said, "You won't." They tried spinning up backups, found they couldn't push to prod without root tokens. Those tokens, bound to a vault chain that required my biometric confirmation. The only person who ever had override access was Gwen, and she never activated it because we agreed years ago. Arcline doesn't get touched unless both of us approve. I hadn't revoked the repo yet. Not entirely. One branch was still private, technically accessible, though no one dared touch it without triggering a compliance flag. So I left them a note. I logged into the private repo on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, typed one final commit. No code, just a comment. Last revision held, author removed. Then I closed the laptop. Not out of spite, not to twist the knife. I did it the way you close the lid on a piano you'll never play again. With respect, with finality. Back at headquarters, panic was spreading. One junior engineer, Beth, sharp kid, used to take late-night shifts with me during deployment windows, dug through old Slack threads looking for clues. She found one from 3 years ago. I'd posted it during a tense roadmap debate where someone wanted to rush new features without testing the regression stack. My message was simple. If they force it, the system breaks. Clause 6.2e will protect us. Beth forwarded it to legal. No context, just the message. Gwen read it, nodded once, and said, "She warned us." And still, I didn't answer their calls. Not because I wanted them to suffer, because I didn't owe them my breath anymore. They called it a system. But it was always a relationship, and I ended it, quietly, without yelling, without burning the building down. I just walked out and locked the door behind me. By the end of the week, the silence broke, not inside the company, but outside. An investor update leaked, a spreadsheet flagged contingent tech stack volatility, and someone in finance, probably not even malicious, just careless, forwarded it to a third-party consultant who also happened to be on a VC advisory board. 48 hours later, the rumors hit. Critical infrastructure at Redacted may be compromised. Core IP linked to a single unaffiliated contributor. A principal architect resigns, clients left in limbo. That last one stung. Not for me, for them. Because clients don't like words like limbo. Clients like redundancy, scalability, and 24/7 access. Not bound license voided due to corporate oversight. By Monday, 3 clients canceled quarterly reviews. One demanded a full audit before the next billing cycle. Another paused renewal talks until licensing clarity is resolved. The board panicked. Someone finally asked aloud why the founder's son was still in charge of anything. He wasn't by Tuesday. Zach's resignation was announced in a 6-sentence email that blamed misaligned vision expectations. No thanks, no party, no farewell card, just gone. The founder held a closed-door session that same afternoon. No one leaked the recording, but word got around. He asked if anyone had eyes on me. No one did. That's when Gwen stepped in. She bypassed PR entirely, sat at her desk, opened a blank Word document, and wrote a single-page statement herself. "We deeply regret the decisions that led to the departure of our principal architect, Lydia Reynolds. Her contributions define the backbone of our systems. We apologize for undermining her role and for the operational disruption this caused." She sent it directly to every Arcline client contact. My phone buzzed 2 hours later. Not a call, just a message from Gwen. "You were right. I read it. Let the screen go dark. Said nothing. Because this was never about being right. It was about being dismissed so thoroughly, so casually, they never once thought to read the fine print before setting fire to the foundation. Meanwhile, the founder tried to write me. A letter, not an email. I heard through someone close to the assistant. He penned it longhand, left it sealed in a drawer. Didn't send it. Too little. Too late. He still hadn't understood. They all thought the crisis was losing access. But the real loss was the person who built it and decided she didn't need to stay. The wind was louder than I expected. Not violent, just constant, like the hum of servers if they breathed. I stood at the edge of the desert, boots planted in dry dirt, watching a field of turbines turn slowly beneath a sky that didn't care who signed what document or who got credit in a quarterly review. I'd driven out there with nothing but a duffel bag, a half-dead laptop, and a charger that only worked if you held the cord at a specific angle. I hadn't opened the laptop in days. Not since the last commit, not since the fallout. They'd stopped calling. Even Gwen. I think she knew that I wasn't angry, wasn't holding out for leverage, wasn't looking for applause. I'd just moved on. That's the part people never understand. They think walking away is weakness, that staying and suffering proves something. But there's a power in silence, in letting the tower fall without you beneath it. I sat on the hood of the rental car, pulled out the laptop, and waited for it to boot. The battery protested. The desert sun reflected off the screen. The route license manager loaded, still logged in, still tied to my credentials, still waiting. I clicked once. A red box popped up. Revoke all access. Are you sure? I didn't hesitate. The cursor hovered, then settled. Click. Done. No fireworks, no alarms, just the screen dimming, the system powering down, and the desert wind filling the space that used to be noise. I closed the laptop, stood, and walked. Not away from them, but toward myself. I wasn't outsourced. I was the foundation, and they just pulled the wrong brick.